You're listening to RevOps FM with Justin Norris. Welcome to RevOps FM, everyone. Today I'm joined by a longtime friend and collaborator. He is a multi-time founder, a marketing analytics expert, and an all-around innovative guy, Grant Grigorian. Grant and I first connected through the Marketo community more years ago than I probably care to acknowledge at this point, and he went on to found the company Path to Scale, which made a marketing analytics app and was later acquired by Engagio, later acquired by Demandbase. And now Grant is back innovating in the analytics space. He just can't keep himself away and is the founder of an app called Mogi, which automates marketing data analysis using AI, turning data into action faster. So we're going to learn a bit about what it does in all things AI today. Grant, it was always a blast to hang out with you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Grant, maybe we just start, you have been in this data space, I guess, for, 10, 15 years. You keep coming back to this problem. And I'm just curious, what is it for you that draws you here? What's broken that you feel just needs fixing?
Well, you're right. I do keep coming back to the same problem. I would say more than a decade ago, I was a data analyst and I found myself at a tech company. And what really caught my curiosity was that the CMO was a very analytical person, and he wanted a analytical model almost of the way that they spent money. It was a VC funded tech company. And so he gave me this giant Excel spreadsheet and he said, Grant, your job is to validate all of these assumptions that are, it was like the classic, we'll spend money here, get this many leads and then MQLs and then like that whole thing. And I had never seen that before. And then prior to that, my background is in, more like sciences, engineering, math world. I didn't know how people, quote unquote, made money. I didn't think you could just quantify it like that. And I was like, wait a minute. You mean we're just going to engineer our way into, sales? And he's like, yeah, there's how many meetings and then handshakes and and closed one. And so we worked backwards from how much money do you want to make? And I was like, wow, this is incredible. This is a way to engineer success. And you're saying it's my responsibility to ensure that this is all going to work out. And I found it to be basically an impossible task. So he gave me a task that he knew was going to be very hard for me to actually achieve, given the reporting capabilities that we had at the time. And we had Marketo, early customer of Marketo. We had Salesforce, all these things. And I just fell in love. I was like, wow, this is so surprisingly complicated. It was a B2B company, large deal size, many stakeholders, and it took a long time to get the deal. And so all of those ingredients, and there are many different campaigns happening at the same time, many different people involved, salespeople, SDRs, marketing people, multi-channel, go-to-market. It was impossible. I was like, wow, this is so interesting, so complicated. I want to make this work. And I've kind of been trying to get that CMO's approval since then.
What made it impossible at that time? Was it just the technology that you had available to you or something else?
All of those things are still difficult today. It's a classic attribution-ish problem of how do you capture all of those interactions, and then how do you decide what mattered, and then how do you do more of what matters and less of what doesn't. Let's be less wasteful. Let's enable. And all of the same things that we have today applied then. I just knew a lot less about everything. So what ended up happening was, at the time, that company didn't have a Salesforce admin. And so I was like, well, where's all this data? It's in Salesforce. Oh, okay. Who's in charge of it? No one. I guess you are now. And by de facto, I did become a Salesforce admin there because I was like, okay, well, let's standardize the opportunity object. Let's figure out all the leads and how they're organized, the lead sources, that whole thing, campaigns. And then he's like, oh, Salesforce is fed by this other system, Marketo. Who's in charge of that? No, I don't know. No one. You are. And now I'm doing Marketo, and now I'm a business operations manager. Now we're doing worldwide business operation. Now we have channel and then partners in Europe, and we've got direct sales, go to market in the United States. And so now the spreadsheet is getting more complicated. My dashboards are getting more complicated. Roughly the same thing happens today in companies. Now, when I consult and when I go and I open up Salesforce or it's either some vendor that has a flavor of that. We've got all the touch points. Now we're doing some sort of analysis to see which things mattered. But there are so many obstacles to it. There's like data capture, there's standard process, all the way to interpretation of the final results and what does it mean and what should we do about it. All of those things are hard. They involve alignment. They involve good business practices. They involve lots and lots of communication and lots of non-math things also. And that's what makes it really, really difficult.
I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's episode, Knack. You know, I love marketing automation software, but let's be honest, the email and landing page builders are usually terrible. You can't make it nice without a developer, and marketers are going to find a way to break things or go off brand. You do not have time for that. So Knack is totally different. You set the guidelines and then give your users a building experience that's slick, modern, and beautiful. When they're done, everything goes to your map at the push of a button. And don't worry, it supports global teams, approval workflows. It's got your integrations. So head on over to revops.fm/knack. That's KNAK, and get a special offer just for my listeners. My observation is that the state of marketing analytics has not progressed very much at all, I think, in the last 10 years. I think you've alluded to this too. I think if anything, in some ways, it's regressed, or at least is coming to a point of crisis in that there's very little consensus. Everyone thinks that every other method is wrong. A lot of methods, like maybe certain types of attribution that historically have been popular, are now like under heavy attack all the time. It really just feels like as a discipline, we don't know what we're doing, which is kind of embarrassing. Can you comment on this situation at all and maybe where you see it going?
I have such mixed feelings about this. So I agree with you. And in many ways, it's a good thing. I don't know if we should be allowed to capture every interaction in a digital and non-digital form and put it on a spreadsheet for marketing purposes. There will be, by design and by legislation, the way buyers want to buy from vendors. They don't want all of the interactions to be visible to vendors. We don't want to be spammed. We want to take our own approach to how we're going to buy and have some level of control. And when we're already engaged with the sales process. And I think there is a kind of a natural tension, both for privacy purposes, for the way buyers want to buy, that's making it basically an impossible equation to later solve. So I agree that it will never be technically perfectly solved. I do think that it's still valuable in a sense that it's directionally the best we could do with the data that we have. And so we do want to make use of it, but we can't say that it's 100% accurate, nor can we just completely throw it away and say, well, if it's not 100% accurate, why does it matter? Well, nothing is 100% accurate. And so I think there are some nuggets of interesting insight that exist in that data set. It's just not the end all that it's sometimes sold to be, either both by vendors and as a solution to some internal problem that sometimes get pushed. You know, oh, if only we had this dashboard, then we would know where to, well, you won't. It's not a magic bullet for sure.
The challenge I've run into a few times is the marketing leader or the CEO, whoever, wanting that dashboard that gives the magic formula. Like, I think there's this myth that's like, oh, if we could just see like 2 webinars plus 3 ebooks plus cold call equals an opportunity, and then we'll just keep doing that. And of course, that I think we both agree is kind of a fictitious proposal. But when you come in and you're navigating these expectations, what do you actually propose then? It's like, here's what's useful. What does good look like in your eyes?
It really depends on what the stakeholders want to do with it. So there's so many different motivations for companies to try to make that dashboard. Sometimes it is an existential crisis for marketing, unfortunately. There's so many marketing teams that are under siege for funding or for a threat to be laid off or somehow replaced, or are everybody questioning all of the investments all the time. When the marketing to CEO relationship is broken, they need a dashboard that says, we did a thing, that was valuable enough that wouldn't have happened without us. So please give us another day. That's a big one. And so for those folks, it's not about gathering all of the touch points. It's about, and we show that we did something good. Like we've been working here for like a year. What did we do? Did we contribute in any way? Can you please show some results in a way that are compelling in the court of that executive boardroom? Okay. All right. Well, let's get to work on that. Low bar. And then other people are more sophisticated. They want to know where do we spend the money in a more incremental way? And they need proof. They need some sort of a thing that's more than just their opinion. But I find very often they already know what the best campaigns are. They already know all of the things. They just want this additional validation, whether it's coming from a consultant or from this dashboard that allows them more political power in an organization to then say, let's do this because see, it's over here. And it is just one of many ingredients that they bring to the table to argue to spend more money. So then what I usually do is I literally ask, what's the story? I literally want them to tell me, what is it that you're trying to say? If you're going to go to this important meeting and you need this dashboard to help you, say what? What is your hypothesis about what the numbers will say? Oh, I need to say that these deals are, the deals that have marketing touches and lots of them end up being bigger. And so that's, if we want bigger deals, you need more marketing. That's what I want to argue that by having marketing teams, you're going up market and to the enterprise. And so you need us to be able to do that. Can you show that? So then I want to know, what is it that we're trying to prove? What is the hypothesis? And then backwards engineer. Well, this dashboard won't work for that anymore. This was something else dashboard. You want this whole other data set entirely that shows some sort of a correlation with number of touches and deal size. And you want to show something positive. So that's how I approach it. I don't think there is a singular answer. And it very much is driven by the internal business dynamics of the company.
So maybe let's keep drilling on that example because it's an interesting one that I think we can all relate to. A company wants to tell the story that more marketing touches equals a bigger deal size. What's your next step? Like, are you then starting to think about data structure? How do you work backwards from that problem?
Yeah, I immediately think, oh gosh, how do I reinforce that? Can we go and interrogate the data and tell that story? So then I need two things. I need marketing interactions, so I can literally count them. And they need to be classified as marketing or non-marketing. So I have a classification problem. I have a capture problem. Are they all going to be there when I go to them? I probably need to control for other interactions too, so that we can say it wasn't just marketing. There's all these other teams that were involved. So all of a sudden the scope is, okay, I need all the interactions for everybody, for all the deals. And then I need to connect them with deals. So these interactions can't just float in the air all by themselves. They need to be within some company. So some important person. Okay, so which person? So now I have which interactions are in and which interactions are out. I get to throw away some interactions. Maybe they're not really interactions. Maybe we sent them an email, but they never clicked on it. Okay, that's not an interaction. So then we have to define what is an interaction. We get that going. Now we have another stream of work where, okay, but how are they connected to what was purchased later? Okay, so they work at the same company. Did they ever talk to a salesperson? Okay, so now we have another stream of work that's all about connecting these interactions with your deals. If you've got that going, then we can just count them over what period of time? Count them forever, that we've ever had interactions across everyone at the company or across each person. Okay. How many people are there involved? Okay, so now we have another multiplier, which is number of people that we talk to in an organization, and then how many interactions each of that person had. So do you see what I'm saying? So now I've got all these spreadsheets of people, of interactions, and of deals. I've got some sort of a connection between them, and I basically want a table that has some sort of a bucket that says this is the deal size from 100,000 to 200,000, 200,000 to 500, a million, on y-axis, and number of interactions with marketing on the x-axis. And I want a scatter plot of all of the deals or where they landed. And I want to see a thing that correlates them that says the more, the better. And if I have that, I could then fade everything into the background and have my correlation line that says there is a connection. And here's what it is. For every 10 additional marketing interactions, you get 50,000 bigger deal or something. And then you write that in big letters. Everything else goes away. And you say, here's the math. You give me more money for more interactions. I give you more money back. That's the investment math. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen of the corporate jury, you should award me more money.
You've come back to the story. And so I think it's an elegant example of how you start with the story, into the data, all the difficult engineering, and then back with the money slide. And it's funny that we chose this example because I was doing some similar analysis. But you also mentioned the word correlation line, and it's called correlation line. It's not called causation line. And this is the challenge. I was careful to kind of asterisk my own analysis in this way of like, correlation doesn't always equal causation. How do you kind of address that problem?
You addressed it with executive trust. That's how. With business acumen. The problem is that the executive who's asking me for this information feels under siege. There is fear in the air. And these numbers are there to assuage whatever doubts and concerns some other executive has about this money. And so they're in this struggle for power. If they had the full trust and understanding of their colleagues and the CEO of how marketing works, and that they believe that this person is a competent marketer and they know what they're doing, none of this would be necessary. This is like, we're jumping through hoops just to satisfy this like uncertainty that exists that is unnecessary ultimately. But in my opinion, in the context of that company, in the context of that decision-making process, they find it necessary. So you say, oh, it's not correlation, it's causation. Okay, well now we're nitpicking this analysis. And the marketer could come back and say, we can spend another $30,000 and go and run a regression model with some analysts. We can hire data scientists and they will go and they'll run correlation. We'll find some coefficients that are technically, statistically valid within the bounds of the P's and the S's and the whatevers. Does anybody care? So we switch the word from correlation to causation. It's the same chart. Maybe the outcome is the same. We just wasted more and more money chasing false precision.
So it's a political exercise, in other words.
So that's why I go back to the story and I'm like, how much fear is in your voice when you tell me that story? Which also correlates to how many asterisks and slides will this need to have to really show, the results? Because the data is already inaccurate. There's so many error terms in there that flipping it from correlated to causal is not going to overcome that. It's an imperfect data set based on what we talked about before.
And this is maybe the most common type of analysis, especially in today's climate when many marketing teams do feel under siege. There's another flavor of analysis where it is more about how do I understand what's working? And I know that you're playing these days, Mogi is playing in a more tactical space at the moment, like you're looking specifically at the email channel and trying to understand what is working there. Tell me about that type of analysis, because there it's less about like, should we stop sending email? I don't think anybody's thinking that. It's more like which emails should we do more? What's working? How are those stories being told?
You're right. So that was just one example. That was like the existential, should we even exist example, really scary for everyone involved. And that's why trust is so important. That's why it comes down to relationships ultimately. No PowerPoint is going to save you if the relationships are broken. But there's many different analysis and many different types of data or stories to tell. And so the one that we talked about is kind of at the highest level. And then it kind of goes down to more tactical, like the teams that are executing the marketing itself need some sort of feedback about what are they doing that's effective. How do we measure effective? Okay, well, many different ways, but we need some way to measure so that we can give them feedback about, hey, this campaign worked better than this other one, whether that's email or a trade show or advertising. We need some way to measure that. And there is huge amount of resources being spent in addressing that. And it is a chaotic, wild, wild west world because we have so many different channels, ever-changing channels, and lots of tricky vendors that want to show that spending money with us was so good, you know? And so as a company, then you need to have enough proactive analysis and proactive data to do your own assessment of what was effective and what was not. So yes, when we started Mogi, we said, let's try to address this like one area, which was all about email. We have this somewhat expanded since then, so I can't wait to tell you. But the way that I think about that is much more routine. And there the stories are stories of success and failure, basically about specific campaigns. And so I want to be able to, on a timely basis, go back to marketers and say, hey, remember that campaign that you did? Here's the good of it. Here's the bad of it. And here's net, some sort of feedback. And based on that, here's some suggestions on future campaigns. And you can cut it in many different ways. You can go as deep as you want, but that's basically the underlying story. Pinterest, although it can be, depends on how high stake that event is. I'll give you an example. These days, it's very popular for big software companies to throw these like big annual shows. Think Marketo Summit or Dreamforce or stuff. Everyone wants to have one of those for themselves. And that's a huge high stakes event. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on those events. And so for sure, they want to tell a story of some sort of success. So that's where everyone gets involved, lots of visibility into that story. And at a very tactical level, how many customers came, how many prospects came, did they then later sign, how many new prospects did we generate? But usually it's a lot more mundane. It's a lot more like, let's make a list of all the campaigns. Let's see which ones were executed well. So, there were participants. Not everybody unsubscribed. There were some decent engagement. Like we can talk about those metrics also. And then beyond that, move on to, well, but did it make a difference? Was there an op? Was there a meeting? Was there free trial? And then ultimately, did it lead to some sort of sale? That's how I think about it as it's like a layered cake. We start with the basics and then we go deeper and deeper and deeper. And on the one hand, we go deeper and deeper in a sense of like, was it the content that mattered? Was it the title of the person? You can go deeper into each channel, or you can go up the strategic chain and talk about the impact of that, which then takes us right back to the beginning of the conversation where we started.
When thinking about the need for this type of platform, do you see the problem as, marketers just don't have time to circle back in this way? In other words, an efficiency and process problem? Or do you see it as marketers actually are lacking the analytical skills and acumen to analyze this data and come to these conclusions, and so we're solving for that? Or is it a mixture of the two all at once?
For sure, a mixture of the two. I would say it's a balance. If you had, out of the 100% of your time, would you rather spend that time executing on the marketing, or would you take out some of the marketing time or some of the sales time to look back at the stuff that you already did to see what worked or what didn't? It's literally you're taking money away from additional advertising spend and giving it to the Grants of the world to do more Excel work, hoping that whatever insights, whatever ROI they find there makes its way back smarter, not harder. So they have to have some sort of a understanding that looking at the data will make them somehow better marketers. If they feel like it won't, when they look at those dashboards or when they have the conversation with the analyst and they start to feel like, I already knew that, this isn't giving me any additional things, it starts to become really painful to try to do analysis because I already knew all of this and I should just be spending my time doing more marketing. That interaction has to be net return to marketers, 100%. If it's not, they will just go do marketing all of the time without the nudging and the feedback that would make them hopefully do better work, if that makes sense.
So I know that it's relatively early days for Mogi.ai. You have been iterating on it for some time now. What's the feedback that you've heard from marketers? What's been encouraging in terms of showing you that you're heading in the right direction here?
So I'll explain a little bit about what Mogi does. So with Mogi, the problem that we're trying to solve is what's called the last mile of analytics problem. For most of my career, I spent working on getting the data, cleaning the data, putting the data on the dashboard or into some sort of a spreadsheet or slides, and then giving it to marketers. And what happens is in the last mile of analytics is what happens when the marketer is looking at the dashboard, right? Is the information going into their brain or is it getting lost in transmission somewhere? Cognitively speaking, literally, do they even look at the thing that you made? And after doing this for over 10 years, I found incredibly that so many of my colleagues in marketing and in sales don't actually spend the time looking at the dashboards as much as I thought that they would be. And they need a lot more handholding, and they need a lot more explaining, and they need a lot more help for many different reasons so that we can get into, both because, let me tell you just a quick story. So when I was an analyst, this is a different company. I'm an analyst there, and I'm producing these dashboards, and I'm working with the CMO directly. She has full trust of her executive team. So she's like, I got to go to an executive meeting. Can you help me prepare? I'm like, great. And I did all the things because I already know about the data. I already know about the dashboard. So I created her a beautiful prep for executive meeting dashboard. And then I highlighted the link and I said, here you go. And she was like, Grant, if I had the Saturday afternoon off, if I had the Saturday afternoon, instead of spending time with my children, if I engaged with this dashboard and I looked at each chart and I clicked into it and I made notes about it, and then I extracted the things that I care about, I could take your dashboard and turn it into something useful for the meeting. But I don't. I'm a busy executive. I'm smart enough to engage with this dashboard, but that's literally your job. You should engage with the dashboard on my behalf. That's like why you're here. It's not just to make the dashboard. You should spend time, stare at the actual numbers too, come up with some bullet points, some talking points for me, for my meeting. And if I have any questions, I just drill in and look at the dashboard. So you and I can then have a debate about the business value of these talking points. Much better conversation than just a technical one, right? I'm happy because I got the thing prepped for me for the meeting, and you're happy because you're having the conversation at an executive level about all of the metrics instead of just being a reporting robot. And so that's the interaction that I was seeing over and over and over and over again. And I really wanted a way for us analyst class, the reporting robots, to elevate our careers and to start having these more strategic conversations with the executives using their language. And their language is all about these business stories. They articulate some sort of a hypothesis. Oh, we should do this. And it's because of X, Y, Z and da, 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 da. It's very much like business school slideshows and much less, spreadsheets and dashboards. Those are all in the appendix. If somebody really wants to, they can go check it out. But you need to be able to pull out and tease. The idea of Mogi was like, can we use technology to do that? Can we spend more time analyzing the data and helping the users, the business users, analyze the data and tease out the stories from the data? Full stop. Can we do that? And I was working on this problem, and simultaneously, the LLM AI revolution kind of happened a couple of years ago. And I was like, this is my moment. This is what I was waiting for. Let's just put some of these dashboards straight into LLMs and off we go. And so we've been working on that problem since. And turns out it is, in fact, a very powerful way to help articulate the insights that might be hidden in the dashboard. but you have to do it correctly. It's also a very burgeoning new field. And so we've been experimenting and playing with that idea that, in my opinion, is inevitable. It is inevitable that in the future, robots interpret the data for us humans. There's way too much data. It's way too complicated. Imagine running a regression coefficient analysis. How are you going to explain it to the executive team? Who's going to explain it? Somebody will need to do that work and put it in the context, the business context of what's being discussed. And so they are going to be great at it. I imagine you would come to work and you would say, hey, robot, give me an update. And it would be like, well, Grant, the stocks are up and the Dow is 2 points and, whatever the equivalent is for your work. Well, the MQL numbers are looking good, but this advertising campaign was doing this. So I adjusted the things. I hope that was okay. And, Nancy over here, she requested this sort of data. So I sent her this. I hope that was okay. And I prepared for you some, you know what I mean? Like, it's going to be proactive. It's going to be doing all this work for you and analyzing all of this data and explaining it to everyone in the context that they need. So I sent this person a spreadsheet and this person got a little summary update. And for you, I put in the long report because I know how much you like to read long reports. Here you go, Grant. So I was like, okay, let's go make that.
Marketers, it's planning season. Time to live in your office with the world's biggest spreadsheet and hope that finance doesn't slash your budget. Listen, planning is tough, but at least you can put your best foot forward with a structured framework that covers all the bases. Our friends at Uptempo have just launched the Blueprint for Marketing Planning. It's a totally free and comprehensive guide for enterprise marketing teams. You'll get a 7-step planning process that integrates top-down strategy with bottom-up execution and gives you a crystal clear picture of how you'll hit your number. Even finance will be impressed. Get your free copy now at revops.fm/plan. I believe you completely. I think that probably is inevitable. I'm curious. Here's the thing, when you actually start to work with these tools, you start to see that, yes, it's there, but there's also limitations. There's also challenges. Where's the gap between that ideal sort of Jetsons-like future and where we are today?
Absolutely. So the thing that I found to be very helpful as anyone who's, there's a lot of initiatives now in companies to hey guys, we got to use AI. We can't be left behind. So I would say this is one of those spaces that you should try to use AI and start playing with it. And so the thing that helped me a lot to think about is to break the word AI. We just use it as a stand-in for the new set of technologies that are all the vendors just called all of their things AI. And so now it's super confusing. What is it that you're talking about? So I almost never use the word AI in marketing and sales because you have to. What was really innovative and that what really pushed us forward was the LLMs. The LLM models, surprising even to the vendors who made them, suddenly sounded really smart. And they sounded really convincing. You can chat with it. You can have a normal seeming conversation, but you have to just remember on the other side is a weird thing that's just trying to predict what the next right word is. It has zero agency about anything. It's just like a word vomit machine. It is a language generator. What I found is that if you attempt to give it any sort of numbers to interpret, it will be terrible at it. Yes, there are vendors who are working on this problem, and OpenAI and Gemini and all these people, they really want to make it into a coherent system that will be reliable and accurate. But today it is just a language generator. You know what the problem is? There's not enough language here. That's when the LLM comes in. Not enough language. And so there are actually many cases like this. I can, for example, say, here's a paragraph, turns into bullet points. Amazing. Does really good job at that. Here's a page turned into a PowerPoint. Incredible, because it just takes language and just puts it into different places. But it is terrible at math. It is terrible at doing the analysis, except the very rudimentary. So what we found is that the problem that we're working on is how do we bridge that last mile? How do we personalize analytics? How do we tell the CMO a story in a way that is relevant to them, while at the same time using those same numbers to tell a slightly different story to the campaign manager and a slightly different story to the rest of the company. We need more language. But what's important is that the underlying data has to be the same. All of those people need to get the same data, just phrased differently, dressed differently. And so that's the thing that I think is going to be really powerful with it. What we found is if you give it context, if you say this is a team of event marketers and they meet every Thursday and you're creating a communication for them to prepare for this meeting. And so therefore you should go look at, I'm going to give you tables that have the best events from the past 90 days. And some of the highlights from the event. And so I'm going to give you tables with actual real data. And your job, LLM, is to describe the table and point things out from the table that I give you. Do not under any circumstance create your own table or your own numbers. But just take the data that I have and talk about it. It does a really good job at it. If you give it context, if you make sure that to give it data to talk about, because it will make up data if you don't give it data. And if you give it the specific things that you care about, the story, what's the story? You literally tell it what the story is and it will say that story. So to prepare for that meeting, right? Maybe the day before, everybody receives a PowerPoint or a document that says, hey, everyone, I know we're meeting tomorrow. Here's the data that we need for tomorrow's meeting. Here are the best things. Here are the campaigns, and here's what went well, and here's what all the things that you would have said, it will do it. Because underneath of it, you already did the work of you have a dashboard where the data comes from. It's already been cleaned up. It's already ready to go. What it's doing is just doing the communicating with the context, and it does it automatically. It will do it every Thursday from that point forward when it's coupled with that event campaign ROI dashboard. And that we found actually works well because we never use it to do any analysis. We just use it to mess with the format. Is it a PowerPoint slide? Is it a document? And we also use it to contextualize the communication. It's a communication tool, not an analysis tool. There you go. That's how you can play with it.
Let me just dig deeper to make sure I understand. You're bringing in raw data and you're producing a summary table, which is all existing technology. We can do that with a Salesforce report for 20, 30 years, whatever. Fine. The LLM is able to take analysis and communicate it in different ways.
Yes.
Got that. What I'm missing, the gap for me, and you're going to fill it in, I'm sure, is what's actually producing the analysis? Because you said it's bad at doing the analysis, but someone has to look at that table and be like, this is high and this is low, like the thinking about the numbers, which you said that the AI isn't that good at. Where does that happen?
Yes, very good. Very good question. What we found is that it's another thing that's helpful to do is to tier out types of analysis. It turns out that when you as an analyst are confronted with a dashboard or a table, there is actually multiple things that you're doing in terms of analysis. The first thing that you're doing is you're scanning. You're scanning and you're kind of looking at lowlights, highlights, things that you should focus more on, less on. So really it's an editorializing job. You need to pick out things that stand out, things that you're going to highlight, or things that you're not going to talk about. Because you can't show the whole thing. You can't just shove the whole dashboard into somebody's brain. Until we get the Matrix plugin and the USB connections, we can't do that, right? That's the whole point. Human communication is sequential, so you can't do it all at once. It has to come in order. This is important. It's like a slideshow or a movie. Right now, I'm talking to you sequentially through time. And so we are designed to receive information bit by bit by bit. So what's going to come first? What's second? And what should we highlight or not about each of the things? So that's like level one. Level two is like, why is this happening? Okay, the numbers are down. I'm glad you caught that. I'm glad you caught that the numbers used to be high, but now they're low. Why? That's level two. That's much harder because very often we need additional information. It's no longer on that same dashboard. You got to go talk to Frank. You got to go talk to this other person. You got to go run more reporting. Maybe you need to run some regression or something. It goes into some other direction. So what LLMs are decent at is level 1. It will scan it and it will say, you human, dedicate your human resource, literally your human brain power, to coordinate and do triage on this table here, because this number is lower than what you told me. You told me to tell you anytime this number is lower than this other one, you told me to tell you. So here it is. And so it's lower. I don't know why, but it is. So someone should look into it. So it will generate additional deeper questions, and it will help to guide further analysis. And the whole idea is that the marketing analytics team does not have to do level 1 analysis. That looking at the dashboard, scanning and pointing out things that are either really good or really bad or are normal, and then sending that communication to whoever needs to receive it on a timely basis every single time. That we can do. That's possible today. We can execute that. We are not yet at level 2. I think we're all working on, okay, so if it didn't work, why? Send a survey to Frank. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how to, I haven't gotten to level 2 yet. And level 3 could be, what should we do about it? What does this mean? These deeper questions are still going to be up to us humans to figure out. But this level 1 is very much possible to take what was on a data. So that's the new kind of direction for Mogi, is not just the email data. But what we found is that it's the general dashboard communication. So what we're doing is we're ingesting your dashboard. And so we take the whole dashboard that you built with your data on it. And then we're saying, here's a tool to help you tell a story about this dashboard. What should we talk about first? And you would literally say, first talk about this component, because usually they're designed to be scanned by human in a certain order. And so first notice the overall revenue numbers. We're behind. Oh God. Okay. All right. So in which region are we behind? Okay. It's this one. So say something about the region. And then there's expectations and business context. What does it mean to be behind? What are we behind in? Is it the MQLs? Is it the ops? Is it the revenue? What are we talking about? And so it is kind of an interactive story creation aspect that then contextualizes the communication from that table. And the LLM is able to then ingest it, the table, the context that you gave it, and produce an output that's relevant for that moment in time or whatever that was for.
So that makes perfect sense, breaking it out into those levels. So level 1, more like a pattern recognition, what's high, what's low.
Yes.
Makes total sense that it could be able to do that. To get to level 2 to level 3, is it a limitation of the underlying language models today? In other words, like OpenAI or whatever, like lower level of granularity tools, but beneath that need to up their game? Or is it more folks like you need to be building smarter software to allow those models to do that next level or those next levels of analysis?
It's a language generator. It's just a word creation machine. It has no additional context on how to solve a problem, a business problem at your company, at the event that you just did. It has no idea what's going on. So the only thing it's good at is like communicating what you already told it. So if we, for example, go back to the analysis about the number of interactions with the accounts, how would it do that? Could we make an automated way to tell that story? That'd be cool. So that the CMO doesn't have to ask me. He can just schedule every Monday. Tell me that story again. It's the most beautiful story ever told at this company. Tell me again, LLM, how I contribute to deal size, right? Every night before bed, I want you to tell it to me in a haiku form. Go ahead, LLM. It will do it. It will literally do it. Give it to me in a sonnet. And so the way to execute on that is we'll need to give it that table. that that chart is made out of. So it will have to have interactions already pre-calculated, deal sizes already pre-categorized, and even that line pre-made. And even some talking points about what the slope of that line. If that slope is positive, that's good. Say positive things about it. If that slope is negative, that's bad. We want more interactions to mean bigger deal sizes. Okay, so what if the additional questions asked are like, well, tell me more about which type of titles are better, have a stronger connection? Or is there certain companies that produce a better correlation? Certain industries where this resonates even more? Or even the reverse. Are there situations where can you pick out accounts that don't produce this result, that somehow we're immune to marketing? We could ask that question, but we need to have the answers ready to give it. We need to do that analysis up front and say, here's an example of when it doesn't work, and have separate tables for that. So the AI, the language model, has no ability to do any of those like very custom analysis. All it does is just verbalize what you tell it. That's why I would never rely on it to do anything. Do you know what I mean? But you can't orchestrate that kind of a conversation, if you will, like if you were chatting with an AI. If you said, if someone asks you this question, I want you to go and look at this other set of tables. If it's within the context of that conversation window, maybe the context is we're going to talk about marketing interactions and deal size. And in that window, it has access to all of that data that you already pre-selected for it. It can definitely tell that story. Absolutely. And it can go and say, oh, also, I wanted to highlight companies that are immune to marketing. Here they are, based on this table over here. Then you can go look at yourself, human.
Taking a slightly different example to explore this further, let's say every week, I do a report out of marketing performance. I look at my overall number. We look at SQLs and I say, how are we doing? Are we on pace? If we're not on pace, we break it down by market. We say this market is behind pace.
Yeah.
And if this market is behind pace, then I break it down by channel. And then we look at conversion rates. And I don't need to tell you this, but there's like a series of things. It would seem quite possible, assuming we provided a persistent set of data to AI, that it could perform that and that we could train it to perform that analysis up and down the chain as many times as it needed to.
Absolutely. What you described so far, no problem. Keep going. What else? That task has not been automated.
I would like that, by the way. That would be very helpful because it's very time consuming and you need to remember to do it, etc. Now, let's say, so getting into the why. Hey, it's Labor Day. You and I are having this conversation on Labor Day. So
that's right.
Part of our vacation in North America. This is a holiday. So we would expect that performance for this week in North American markets would be lower proportionally by 1 day. So 20% of the week. Could AI figure that out if it was aware of the calendar and when the holidays were?
That's a good question. That's where probably not. Unless you ask it to, probably not.
So that's crazy to me because that seems like a pretty basic, and I don't consider myself the world's greatest analyst at all, but I could arrive at we had one less day. Or would we have to tell it, check the days of the, which all of a sudden starts feeling very rules-based again, which was the magic of LLMs was supposed to be that it doesn't have to be rules-based. It learns, it trains itself, etc.
That's not true. The magic of LLMs is that it has more and more context to generate more plausible sounding words. Okay. I wouldn't conflate LLMs with some sort of a statistical machine learning algorithm, which is a different type of AI that basically generates some sort of coefficients that connect some things to others, that whether Labor Day is correlated to performance. And over time, over many years of Labor Days, you will find that it does, and therefore definitively have a positive coefficient that says Labor Day impacts performance. And it is that coefficient that you would feed into an LLM to then say, when that coefficient is positive, say that Labor Day contributes to. So what I've seen cleverly done with some vendors that I think we have an opportunity to do, and anybody who's doing this sort of, for example, I remember when we talked about email, you asked Grant, this email statistic stuff is great, opener rates, click rates, but like, can you go deeper into why these emails are performing well or not? Can you like analyze the subject line and the content length? And was it sent on a Tuesday? And who was it sent to? What are their titles? Where do they live? Do you know what I mean? And I was like writing it down, being like, can't do all that. What are you talking about, Justin? But, well, you could do that. You could take all of those as causal factors, put it in a regression, and just run that as often as you like, build in machine learning algorithm. LLM is not that. That is not the kind of AI that you're looking for. That's a different type of statistical modeling software that would take causal factors and arrange them by coefficient of influence, which one has the highest and which one has the lowest. And it will spit out a table, a very confusing looking table with lots of decimal points that someone has to explain to us mere mortals. What are we supposed to make of this? Well, it turns out that a big contributor to email success is the length of the subject line, how many characters it has. And so that is a big determining factor. I see that your specific email had a really long subject line. So perhaps that's why it didn't do as well. So you would have those coefficients to talk more deeply about the performance. So you would have to give it the coefficients. And then it would have that in its yet another table to generate more words about.
What I'm hearing is that it's almost like multiple different types of AI working together.
Absolutely.
That you would need to orchestrate somehow at the software level with like, mathy AI, like machine learning AI, generating tables of stuff.
Just think about like OpenAI. Their thing is all about making a thing that is roughly like human-like. It lacks business context, but it doesn't know anything about your company. So you have to teach it about your company and the language that you speak there. What widgets are we selling? Are we counting MQLs? What's an MQL? All that kind of stuff. You have to give it that context. You have to give it access to data. And then you have to tell it like what sort of things to do with the data. And they're not going to make very niche things. So underneath that machinery, when they get a table, they're going to run actual run-of-the-mill statistical analysis on it. They're going to find the mean. They're going to sort it. They're going to do all sorts of things to the table that they think is normal to do to any data table that any user gives us, generate those tables that you can then talk more about. So they will guess at what you are probably trying to do, and it will probably get it wrong because it's just a generalized smart system. It wasn't made for your marketing team and your company. So that's why I'm not relying on them getting that right. Not yet. Maybe in 5 to 10 years, that depth of knowledge of statistics and domain knowledge will be deep enough that it's like, just hook me up to GA4, Marketo, and Salesforce, and I'll just generate insights. You know what I mean? Maybe it will get there. But today, you can approximate very intelligent sounding responses as an analyst by feeding it what you want it to talk about and telling it who you want to say what, and having that automate some of your analytics function, the most basic ones, the ones that are most time consuming and boring, the scanning, the routine updates, that can be automated. You will become the tier 2 analyst. You will proactively see where the things are up and where the things are down, and then maybe chime in and be like, oh, I already did the analysis of why. I talked to the right people, and it turns out it's Labor Day, guys. It was Labor Day all along, and that's why. Everybody calm down. The numbers are down because of Labor Day. And they'll be like, oh, wow, that was the context that we were missing.
Already, we have apps where you can upload your own docs. So I know like some writing apps like Copy.ai, you can upload your own brand guidelines and style guidelines and stuff. And then it will generate things with that context in mind.
Totally.
How far away are you? This sounds kind of crazy, but it as we're talking about like the model is only as good as the context. The way that you onboard a human analyst into a business, you could onboard an AI agent, have it read every email, attend every meeting, read every post and every system and every Slack message.
Totally.
It would generally or gradually generate that context for itself, absorb that context. Would it then be able to use that to provide better answers to these sorts of questions?
I think all of the big vendors, they are racing as fast as they can to create this agent future. I mean, Microsoft tried to include the agent as part of the operating system itself. So it would just watch all of your windows and everything that you do. And the users were like, no, don't do that. I need a way to like turn you off some of the context I don't want you to know about. And absolutely. I mean, if you could manipulate your screen, if you could just click into the dashboard, you could just watch you work for a little bit, watch everyone at the company work. And it's the same agent, really? You know what I mean? That knows what everyone is. It's kind of creepy. I don't know. But
it's incredibly creepy. I mean, it's like where your brain goes, like, how would you solve that problem? And then you sort of stand back in kind of horror at the dystopian aspect of it. But
the white collar job is this level 1. So that's what I tell the kids is that, guys, level 1 stuff, that's not going to cut it. Scanning, oh, this number is high, this number is low. Here you go, boss. We can't do that. It's a matter of time that is automated, and you want it to be. And so it will become more like, what does it mean? What are we supposed to do? But it's going to do that too. Such a better job than we do in many ways, because it will be more reliable. It will not get tired. It'll not just start checking Facebook all of a sudden, as we tend to. So absolutely. So I try to squint and I'm like, where is this going? What's it going to be like? So that's why that story I told about this agent future, where there is some system that has the business context for work. I'm hoping it's separate from home and work, whatever, but it's like you join a company and there's this guide. It says, oh, hi, you've joined this company. Let me show you what's important, what's not important. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be here every day with you, and I'm going to help onboard you. I'm going to help with communications with the rest of the team. Oh, this person over here, this is what they need now. And this person needs this. And this is what you're supposed to read and give your feedback. Here's my feedback. Let's have a discussion about it. So I try to play those games in my head, like, gosh, what's it going to be like? And very quickly, I'm like, we don't even need that person, do we?
That's the benign fantasy is that like we're just going to be there and AI's helping, and then the reality is at least there's no way that there isn't many fewer people doing these jobs than there is.
They're doing a very different job. So that's why I'm like, okay, I'll let everybody else do these like futuristic big picture predictions. There's many podcasts you can go listen to about all sorts of visions of what that future is going to look like. I'm like, can I just work on my analytics things and what does that look like today? The reality is that the amount of infrastructure and effort it takes to produce a decent data set to even consider looking at is so vast. Like I think about all of the integrations that need to go into some sort of a data warehouse, all of the data engineering of connecting everything, defining everything. And every company has very unique things, from product to, divisions and industries and the way that they sell. All of that is custom made by humans. They will have their little helpers to help them along the way. But that custom bringing together, I can't see an AI just taking over that part. So there's lots of data engineering stuff that will still be done very manually, very deliberately. And then there is the creation of these like dashboard, the human, what's not changing? I guess with like Neuralink, I guess it is changing, but our ability to consume information is we're still humans that we were thousands of years ago. And so someone will need to explain to us what the hell's going on to the ones that are left. So that's why I picked The Last Mile. That was the most interesting to me. I was like, can we be better at this? Can we, instead of doing a slideshow, can I do a little movie? Why can't I make a little animation about when you log in? Maybe it's like a little animated thing about how your campaigns are performing. Maybe it's like a TikTok video about marketing attribution. if that's what's engaging. So I was thinking of more of what content captures attention, because what we have limited amount of is time spent and what are we paying attention to? Who cares about this? And so I want to make analytics content that's engaging, useful, that captures attention, that then drives some decision making. And I was like, okay, the AI tools that we have today can help tremendously with this effort. Let's get on with it. That's why I'm so excited about the future and not really down on it, because at best, before we're all fired, we will have a few decades where we're interacting with this AI and it's helping us with work and it's driving us to more strategic conversations and the work is less mundane. And then when, what happens 50 years from now, I have no idea.
I mean, by the time we're all fired, maybe we're in a world with no resource constraints and the notion of needing to work for money becomes obsolete as well. And so no one cares if they get fired.
Before they turn on humanity, it will be like paradise. But then it's back to Terminator, right?
Depends which genre of science fiction you like to watch.
I want to be in a trolley with the Slurpee. That's what I want.
The WALL-E versus Star Trek, because in Star Trek it's just like, oh, we don't have any constraints and people are sort of more fully self-actualized. And in WALL-E, you're in the trolley
Matrix,
with the Slurpee.
Yeah, exactly.
The color of the day is red and your shirt changes. That's a fascinating thought journey there. So thank you for riding with me along on that, Grant. Maybe just in closing, I want to ask a little bit about you, your motivations. You're a repeat founder. I think as everyone can probably see, you're just like a guy that likes thinking about these innovative problems. You're sort of drawn to these things, moth to a flame. What's the motivation for you? Certainly not the most like stable and like relaxing life as a startup founder. What keeps drawing you back in this direction?
Yes, a good question. I found myself very entrepreneurial very early on. It wasn't just in tech. When I graduated college, I had like a normal job in a cubicle, wear shoes every day, and I had to go there in person and ride the elevator. Yeah, I say that as I sit here without any shoes. Oh my God, the dream has come true. Yeah. And I found myself I wanted more. So I remember one of the first things is I started a tutoring company. And so we were doing, so I hired some tutors. We did that. Then I was part of a beekeeping company. I did a marketing and selling of honey. It was really amazing, probably a different podcast, but I found this amazing beekeeper that produced honey of different colors because the color of the honey changes depending on what pollen source the bees went to.
Yeah,
and he was a migratory beekeeper. And so all these different honeys were all the different flavors and we like paired them with cheese. And I would cold call like Kroger and cheese shops around the country and sell honey. Anyway, I loved it. I loved all of that. For some reason, I was just always drawn to that. And so when I found tech and combining that with entrepreneurship, off I went. And I was like, okay, there's ability to innovate here. That's what I want to be doing. And when I found these thorny Salesforce Marketo analytics questions, I immediately was hooked because I was like, oh, this is, first of all, everybody wants to know the answers to some of these questions. And everybody's doing it in their own way, but they're all kind of asking. So when I became a consultant, that's when it became really crystal clear for tech, because as a consultant, you get a broad but shallow view into many companies, which is incredible if you want to build products, because you suddenly see the commonalities across many different companies and you say, wait a minute, these people all hired me. That is, they're willing to pay to solve this same set of problems. Can I like scale myself in some way? And so then you start thinking about carving out what it is that you did and finding a solution for that one specific thing. And off you go. So after the first company, I was hooked. I was like, okay, let's do it again. Step one, become a consultant. When you become a consultant, and I still consult, you experience, first of all, you're on the ground and the person across from you says, Grant, we got to tell a story. What's the story with this data? Can you help me? And you're like, okay, roll up your sleeves. Show me what you got. Where's all those interactions? How big are your deals? Let's go do it. And then in the back of my head, I'm constantly like, okay, this is what this company is doing. This other company, this is what they're doing. And with Mogi, that was the thing. That was the frustrating thing, is like, we made this amazing dashboard. We're onboarding everybody on it. We're trying to explain what it means. And inevitably somebody asks, oh, Grant, thank you. Like, the colors of the dashboards look great. I see that you spend a lot of time, but like, what are we supposed to do with this? And I was like, I failed. And, they don't know how to use this data. That's the part that's missing. So then when I found myself doing that over and over again, and I was like, okay, maybe we need to focus on that part as well.
Well, it is a fascinating problem, and I agree with you, a very valid and important problem. So excited to see what you continue to cook up over at Mogi. For folks that want to check out more, it is mogi.ai on the web. Grant, correct me if I got that wrong.
That's it.
Go over, take a look. You can request a demo if you want to see a bit more in person. You can also follow Grant on LinkedIn. Just look up his name, Grant Grigorian. Grant, always a blast, as I said. Had a lot of fun during this chat, so thank you for coming on.
I had so much fun too. Thanks for having me on.
Hey everyone, I want to invite you over to the RevOps FM Substack community, where you can sign up to get rough transcripts, show notes, longer form articles, and other bonus content. Just head over to revops.fm/subscribe to get free access. I'd also love to know what you thought of the episode and to hear suggestions for topics you want to learn about. Feel free to leave a comment on Substack or send me an email at justin@revops.fm. Thanks for listening.